Dark Little Dreams of St. Augustine. Written by Skye Erikson. Narrated by Skye Erikson. Act 1. Scene 1. I never knew death could be so beautiful to behold. A young woman gazed in open wonder at the billowing bunches of Spanish moss swaying gently from the canopies of the trees that line the pathway to campus. When she'd visited St. Augustine as a small child, she'd had no idea this stuff was a long, slow death sentence. As she continued down the cobbled walkway, she observed that nearly every tree was afflicted. Eventually, they'd all be dead. She mused that she could say the same about all these people, too, as she walked through the crowded street. When death comes for me, I hope it will be as peaceful as that, she thought with a wry smile, though maybe not this slow. She paused for a moment, basking in the realization that she had made it back to these weathered streets after all these years. Was this real, or could it simply be another one of her vivid, recurring dreams? It had been over a decade since her father's untimely death, and she'd spent her entire youth literally dreaming of her return to the last place they had been together, where her last and only joyful memories of him lived in her heart. The accident happened right after we came here. I guess I'm lucky all I lost were my early childhood memories. They said it was a miracle I didn't die, too. She stumbled on the uneven walkway as she resumed her trek. Thankfully, she hadn't dropped the armful of papers clutched tightly against her chest. She paused at a crossway, looking down at her documents. A starch-white folder with an elegant gold and scarlet logo featuring a capital F stared her in the face, her full legal name emblazoned on its glossy surface. Cadence Harmony Clearwater. So cliché. Her name sounded like she was some New Age yuppie spiritual teacher. It made perfect sense once you met her mother, who would proudly introduce herself by her chosen name, Summer Rain, before excitedly inviting you to join her spiritual warrior yoga group she hosted weekly in the back lot of the farmer's market-style co-op she had built herself from the ground up. I guess her legal name, Karen Wilcox, didn't have quite the same appeal. She had to get some caffeine in her system before her first class. Though it was still somewhat early, the sun was shining brightly, and throngs of people were out and about on the charming walkways of historic St. Augustine. Guess it's time I check out the old-as-fuck family bakery everyone won't shut up about. She recalled a conversation she'd had at orientation earlier that week with the resident advisor of one of the on-campus dorms. As she'd noted the bright crimson coffee cup in his hand, she'd realized nearly everyone around had one, and she'd wondered idly if they had a coffee dispenser somewhere nearby that she could take advantage of. Hey, where did you get that cup of coffee? Did I miss the refreshments table? She'd looked around, though she could see nothing nearby. I could sure use one. This? He raised his cup to his mouth, taking a long sip and smacking his thinly mustached lips in satisfaction. As he'd moved his hand, she'd noted there was what looked like a small medieval-style family crest printed on the sleeve of the cup. Sorry, you can't get something this good out of a coffee dispenser. You'll have to check out La Panaderia Valenciano. It's a local coffee shop and bakery down off St. George. Supposedly, they've been here for centuries. They're famous for more than this, though. He'd sloshed the remainder of the latte around inside his cup in a circular motion. Their handmade pastries and breakfast sandwiches are to die for. But for coffee, I recommend the legendary house special. It's a salty, caramely, milky concoction that I can't go more than a day or two without. Fair warning, it is highly addicting. Once you taste it, you'll crave it all the time. Great, she had thought with a sigh. I finally gave up everything but weed and the occasional alcoholic drink. I'd better replace it with another expensive addiction. After receiving his glowing recommendation, no fewer than 8 more people, all loyally clutching their crimson red cups, had asked if she'd taste the bake shop's legendary lattes and pastries. By the third redundant inquiry, she'd already been annoyed, but she'd resigned herself to politely repeating she hadn't had the chance to go yet. She continued her leisurely stroll, enjoying the scenery and humming gently in rhythm with the beauty of the day as she made her way towards the revered local haunt. She passed a huddle of weathered-looking townsfolk, amused by their openly scowling at a gleefully obnoxious group of northern tourists loudly snapping photos of the quaint street. Wouldn't be surprised if I saw a dingy shop selling cauldrons, potions, and post owls. She took a right near the center of St. George, and even from this distance, the aroma of fresh roasted coffee beans wafted temptingly down the narrow lane. As she continued down the path, she saw a man in an overcoat sprint frantically between the cafe tables, holding his floppy hat to his head. He was being chased by a young man wearing an apron and waving a broomstick. "Thieves! Demons!" he yelled as he disappeared down the street. Geez. Wonder how bad they messed his drink up. She pushed her glasses up her nose to peer further down the lane. The hanging wooden sign was still out of her range to read, but the crowded sidewalk was a dead giveaway. "Smells pretty damn good," she observed with a few quick, curious sniffs of the air. "I'll have to try a pastry. Maybe it'll even have cheese," she grinned, silently reveling in the potential of her newfound freedom. Her mother had raised her and her brother vegan, and growing up, it wasn't often that she got to stray outside that realm of cuisine. As much as she loved animals, her appetite wouldn't let her omit meat from her diet entirely. She had taken after her late father by adopting a more flexitarian dietary lifestyle. "I want it, I got it," she smirked. "No way I could give up my garlic Parmesan chicken wings. Bone in or bust." Her mother had divulged once that they were his favorite, too, and it struck her now how much her mother must have loved him to prepare such meals when she herself took a strong moral stance against the consumption of meat. When she approached the entrance, she could finally read the battered wooden sign protruding from the ancient weathered stone building. Panaderia Valenciano, established 1566. Wow, old as fuck is right. This place is as ancient as America gets. She lowered her gaze to the tables of cheerful cafe-goers, sizing up their spreads to see what seemed popular. Beautiful, flaky croissants seemed to grace nearly every table, golden brown and delightfully plump. Many were artfully drizzled and dressed in various sweet syrups, coarse sugars, and crunchy chopped nuts. One surly-looking man had a warm arepa clutched tightly in his hand. Gooey melted cheese was oozing slowly out from between the perfectly toasted corn patties. Another table had a loud, cheerful family sharing a plate of gorgeous, fat-bellied, golden-crusted empanadas, surely filled with a variety of juicy, savory, meaty blends. The enticing aroma of the empanadas was making her mouth water with anticipation. As she walked towards the entrance, she noted each table had an accompanying drink for each person. Adults with their various coffees and espresso drinks, children with their creamy hot cocos and fresh squeezed fruit juices. She spied a fancy frozen drink at one table, topped with a swirling, sweating crown of sweet, melty whipped cream drizzled with chocolate caramel sauce. I guess some people grow up and still want ice cream for breakfast. She gave an imperceptible nod towards the chubby guy in silent acknowledgement of him letting his inner child win out this morning. You go, Glen Coco. Now it's my turn to caffeinate. The weathered stone of the building looked ancient, but the door had obviously been modernized. It was a translucent glass panel, etched with an impressive coat of arms. The image of a beautiful stone fountain sat in the middle, with majestically prancing lions gracing the left and right sides. A large eagle was perched on the top of the fountain, its wings spread wide in flight, with the brilliantly calligraphed Panaderia Valenciano gracing the top portion of the elegant glass portal. The phrase, "Somos para siempre," was written on the bottom. She recalled siempre meant always, but the other words eluded her memory. Always what? Hot and fresh? Despite the door's initial beauty, there were unsightly smudges on the glass, evidence of a busy morning rush. As she added her handprint to the glossy chaos and pushed the door open, a pleasantly warm, sweet-smelling cloud overtook her senses. The rich aroma of roasted coffee beans mixed with hints of hazelnut and honey lingered in her nostrils as she breathed in deeply, observing the impressive interior. Both the ceiling and walls were decorated with elegant painted tile work, bursting with robust colors and bright floral designs. They snaked through the dark wooden framework and around several shining skylights, accenting just enough to keep the demeanor of the interior decidedly half cheery, half dreary. Gorgeous wrought copper metalwork framed the front counter and sides of the pastry display case with great winding vines, their shiny leaves hanging still from the unwavering source. A vibrant array of authentic, homemade baked goods was piled plentifully in neatly organized trays behind the pristine glass case, tempting the morning's hungry patrons with both savory and sweet delicacies. In the center of the seating area, surrounded by dozens of cheerfully chattering patrons, was a great carved wooden sculpture as tall as the bakery itself. A slender female figure, elegantly robed, eternally reached up to the ceiling and held the perceived weight of the structure above with her polished frame. There was one person in line before her, so she took a moment to read the engraving at the bottom of the carving. To carry the weight of the world, it is not strength, but patient endurance in which we must place our faith. Not the worst fortune cookie level advice I've ever gotten. Thanks, wooden lady. She finished her perusal and took her place in line behind the tall, dirty blonde young man, who had finished placing his order while she was gawking at the statue. He strolled to an empty table nearby and plopped in a chair, waiting patiently for the barista to finish making his drink. He saw Cadence glance in his direction and gave her a roguish smile, with an upward nod in approval. She blushed and quickly turned away, not meaning to catch anyone's attention. The last thing I want right now is to fend off a flirty frat boy. As she approached the register, she observed the girl behind the counter hard at work. She had her back turned to her, facing the fancy espresso machine that was making a satisfying grinding sound as it tamped the roasted beans, accompanied by the nearby milk frother hissing and steaming away. Her hair was impressively long and unquestionably jet black. It was tied loosely at the nape of her neck with a small maroon ribbon. It looked extremely healthy, shining like a sheet of polished obsidian in the bright morning sunlight. She gave the milk a precise pour and snapped the lid on smartly before turning towards the register, calling, "Large caramel triple espresso latte for Kurt." Her words stopped short, and for a split second her dark eyes locked onto Cadence's. Cadence froze instinctively. There was a fleeting, fluttering sensation in the center of her chest. In the same millisecond, the barista's eyes widened with unmistakable shock. Her full lips parted ever so slightly, hanging open in awe. Is it my eyes? Occasionally people were a bit taken aback when they first noticed they were two different colors. The left was a rich forest green, and the right sparkled bright and blue as a sapphire in the sun. Now that I see her face, she does seem quite familiar. The bizarre eye contact was cut short as the hot latte the barista had in her hand dropped to the floor with a resounding plop. The steaming contents splashed all over her aprons, jeans, and the floor, completely drenching the girl's uniform. Mierda! Carajo! Puta madre de Dios! Pendeja de diablo! A chorus of what she could only infer were the choicest of choice Spanish swear words erupted from the wounded girl's mouth, her cherry lips forming the foreign cusses with surprising elegance. Stop gawking! Shit! I should ask her if she's okay. Are you okay? She blurted, wincing as she surveyed the caramel-colored carnage. The pretty barista didn't respond, still grumbling and cursing under her breath as she began to clean herself up. Dumbass, of course she's not okay. She probably has second-degree burns on her legs. Why do I have to be so awkward? Fuck's sake. I mean, are you hurt? She pushed her dark-rimmed glasses up the bridge of her nose in concern. All I did was look at her. Maybe I reminded her of someone she hates? They say everyone has a doppelganger. Though closer in color to the latte that had just viciously attacked her, her face had an obvious flush to it. Poor thing. She looks embarrassed. Several other guests peered over from their tables, having heard the colorful outburst that accompanied the clumsy fiasco. No. I'm just a klutz sometimes. Dios mío, it's been a long morning, the barista replied, keeping her dark eyes lowered as she made a hasty attempt to mop up the delicious mess. First day of term is always crazy. You don't say. Sorry, Kurt. I'll have that remade in just a minute. Though her accent was subtle, it still gave an alluring air to her presence beyond that of her dark-haired, bronze-skinned figure. Same to you. It'll be just a moment. That had to hurt like a bitch, and she doesn't even seem fazed. Must be the toughest cookie in the bakery. No worries, Mel. I'd wait all day for a taste of your caramel latte. The handsome young man who had been in line ahead of her grinned goofily and leaned back in his chair, flexing his toned arms in a lengthy, painfully obvious gesture to impress the beautiful barista. Or anyone within a visible radius. Guys like him always cast a wide net. Guess we'll see if she bites. The barista rolled her eyes and smiled wryly. She caught Cadence's gaze for the briefest of moments before turning her attention back to her work, remaking the enormous latte in record time and setting it briskly on the counter for him to take. Prepare to die of thirst, then, she fired back, promptly dousing any flame he may have carried and gesturing towards the door. And point your pistola pequeña somewhere else, gringo. Shots fired, she thought, as the ghost of a smirk formed on her face. Kurt seemed unfazed. Forever and a day isn't too long for me, dollface. He grabbed the latte with a grand bowing gesture, tossing a crisp $5 bill on the counter in reciprocation. For your trouble. He winked at the beautiful barista before turning towards Cadence with a silly grin still on his face. Hope to see you around campus, miss. Sure, maybe, Cadence replied meekly, staring at a small chip in the floor tile that was suddenly extremely fascinating. New kid on the block syndrome already. Great. I had hoped to blend in seamlessly, no one even realizing I hadn't been there all along. She shook her head to clear her train of thought, just in time to watch the pretty girl named Mal deftly remove her wet apron and toss it aside. Don't mind him. He's mostly harmless. She gestured towards the door that Kurt had just strolled confidently out of, whistling loudly as he passed. Oh, him? Cadence answered quickly. I can handle a few oversexed frat boys. They're a dime a dozen back home. She finally drew her gaze back up to Cadence's, locking eyes with her for the third time. A small smirk graced her heart-shaped face. Undersexed is more like it. He's a hound dog after a bone, that one. This close up, she noticed her doe eyes were barely a shade away from the pitch black of her hair. The sunlight glinting off her iris was reminiscent of a full moon shining on the surface of the water at midnight. There was no alarm in them now, only pure stillness and warmth flowing from her dark pools, pouring refreshingly into Cadence's own. Here was a perfect stranger, looking at her in a curiously gentle way, unlike anyone ever had before. But it doesn't feel strange. Is this déjà vu? She giggled anxiously, fidgeting while juggling around a plethora of useless words in her brain. None of them seemed good enough, somehow. Her internal dialogue was running a mile a millisecond. I mean, she seems chill, like someone I would hang out with back home, I guess? It was painfully difficult for Cadence to extend the olive branch of friendship. Truthfully, she had never learned to do it well. Her best friend growing up had always magnetically befriended people, and she just tagged along, being granted acceptance by association. Now she found herself at a loss for words for a completely different reason she couldn't quite put her finger on. A million of them now whirled around in her mind, but she still couldn't catch any, much less formulate them into a coherent thought. Why am I suddenly so nervous? Fuck. Just say something. Please. Mouth. Anything. Yeah, she managed. Some guys don't know how to take a hint. He's the campus charmer, and you're on his radar now, so... You have been duly warned. She waggled her perfectly plucked eyebrows at her. Cadence giggled at her expressiveness, then fell silent again. Say words! Her heart was thumping loudly inside her chest as the silence stretched on. The barista held her gaze patiently without flinching. Now! She cleared her throat, feeling a wad of phlegm rise from her lungs, choking her slightly. Christ, I need to cut back on the weed. I came here to study at Flagler, not shop for a trophy hubby. She grudgingly swallowed the offending mucus, hoping her face didn't betray her less than ladylike behavior. The barista let out a short laugh. It was melodic in its essence and floated across her ears pleasantly. It was as if it entered her very being, sending tingling goosebumps of warmth cascading from her head to her toes. Just like harmonic chords of music. What are you studying? She asked. Breathe, she reminded herself, not realizing she had stopped until her lungs reminded her they were empty with a sharp twang. World history and music theory, she stammered. You'll get your fill of history here. Even this bakery is over 400 years old. She paused before adding. What instruments do you play? Mostly guitar and piano, she stuttered, unsure why her mouth was not forming the words her brain commanded it to. But I have an old cello, too. And a harmonica? She trailed off and realized she was rambling. My dad was in a band when he was my age, and I guess I got the itch, too. Must be in your DNA, then, she said with a brilliant smile. But I'll stop interrogating you. I know you came here to get caffeinated, and maybe some desayuno? When Cadence could only respond with a dumbfounded stare, she clarified. Sorry. Most people know that word around here. Breakfast. You look pale. She seemed to be studying Cadence's face intently, for what she couldn't fathom. She felt the heat rising uncontrollably in her cheeks. Probably not so pale now. Shit. Her nose twitched. Please, please don't have a booger hanging out of you. No, I'm just really white, Cadence blurted, and the barista burst into ethereal peals of laughter once again. The magical sensation washed over her skin, gentle and soothing like a warm spring rain. Her long, shiny ponytail swung gracefully behind her strong shoulders as the incapacitating effects of the laughter slowly began to fade. Claro, even so. Her breathing began to even out from the episode as she placed her long, manicured fingers on the counter to support her weight and lean closer towards her. I've kept you waiting long enough. What is your desire? She gave a wave of her hand without taking her dark eyes off Cadence's mirroring gaze. It smells like fresh flowers. It must be her perfume. Her mouth suddenly felt like arid desert plains that had been thirsting for rain for months. Once again, the barista was waiting patiently for her to respond. Get your shit together. Don't be that ding-dong who acts like they've never been to a coffee shop before in their life. She struggled to swallow the wad of foamy spit that had built up in her useless mouth. What's the legendary house special everyone talks about? She asked with less confidence than she had hoped, her timid voice squeaking at the end of her query. She winced internally. Jesus Christ, I'm fucking hopeless. The beautiful barista seemed highly amused by her awkward behavior. Besides me? She tilted her head to the side playfully, seemingly awaiting her reaction. Cadence couldn't help but grin and laugh stupidly as she felt another rush of heat rise rapidly in her cheeks. She automatically looked down at her feet, breaking the rally of eye contact they had been serving back and forth since she'd entered. I can't think fast enough. Fuck. She's gonna think I'm so stupid. The barista seemed to notice her hesitance and quickly recovered. No need to be shy. Everyone loves the dulce caramel lattes. Her dark eyes glowed with warm assurance. She nodded in agreement like a vacant zombie, mesmerized by the slow, tantalizing way her lips moved to form each word. Realizing she was staring, she took herself back to reality. Oh, actually, I'm not really into super sugary drinks. I guess I'll have a plain coffee then, please. The barista raised her eyebrow. Plain coffee? That's so boring. I think you should trust me on this one. Cadence gulped as she stared at the woman before her. Who am I to argue? Whatever you make, I'm sure I'll love it, she finally said. I'm a creature of habit, I guess. She seemed to light up at this and began pulling fresh espresso shots with expert speed. It's good to try new things. You'll love it. See? I'm a pro. She gestured in what looked like feigned pride at the 5 golden sun pins emblazoned on her chest, above the name tag clipped to her partially unbuttoned collared shirt. Melissa. She had never heard that name before, but she instantly liked it. Guess that's what Mal is short for. I'd assumed Mallory, or something else less otherworldly. I wonder where it originates from. 5-star service. Can't beat that, Cadence replied with equal sarcasm, trying to match her energy as best she could. She watched closely as Melissa reached into the shiny milk cooler to grab a small steel canister. She had neglected to mention her slight intolerance of dairy and felt too shy to bring it up now. Well, it's too late. If I shit my pants today, I shit my pants. This drink better be worth it. She took a deep cleansing breath to ground herself for the rest of the nerve-wracking, yet oddly enjoyable interaction. She couldn't see what the label said, nor did she really care, as she watched Melissa's toned, smooth arms work quickly but carefully to craft the hot beverage. She noticed the lines of a tattoo peeking out from underneath the right sleeve of her black shirt, though she couldn't clearly make out what it was. It appeared to have a feline shape. She thought she spotted a pair of paws and a tail when her sleeve hitched up as she reached for a bright crimson cup to dump the fresh espresso in. Is that a cat tattoo? Cadence blurted out before she could stop herself. Melissa glanced over her shoulder and smiled. Oh, is she peeking out? A little, Cadence mumbled, feeling embarrassed for her excited utterance. I love cats. Me too. Melissa stirred in some sugar, the metal spoon clicking rapidly against the side of the cup, then began to steam the milky contents of the shiny steel pitcher. Call it a souvenir from my more rebellious teenage years. My family finally bestowed the 5th star upon me after many years of remedial service. She saluted mockingly over her shoulder with another small, melodic laugh. Cadence felt her skin tingle pleasantly once more and shivered at the strange sensation. She was thankful the barista's back was turned, so she didn't notice the bizarre wiggle. So, your family owns this place? Cadence asked, tearing her eyes off of her unusually interesting plump backside to take another gander around the bakery's medieval interior. Only since the beginning of time, she answered, layers of amusement in her voice clear to Cadence's ears. It has been passed down in La Familia Valenciano from mother to daughter since St. Augustine itself was founded. People always need breakfast, she shrugged. The barista snapped the lid on top, carefully sliding the fresh latte towards Cadence as she began to reach for her wallet. It's a lovely spot, she replied. I'm sure I'll be back. You haven't even tried the coffee yet, she smirked playfully. I haven't even paid for it yet, Cadence said. I'm no thief. For all I know, you chop people's hands off as punishment for that shit. She gestured towards the abundance of historical decor gracing the interior. Well-worn battle axes and swords were displayed proudly on the walls, mounted high and mighty above the back of the display case. The barista gave her another laugh, its flute-like flutter flitting across her ears gracefully, like an invisible ballet dancer. Why does it sound like music? Just in case you don't like it, the first time is on me. You can keep your hands, she said, smirking knowingly before adding. For now. Don't forget your food. Us girls have got to eat. She plopped a small brown paper bag on the counter next to the steaming latte. What a friendly girl. I guess it's my lucky day. Cadence shook her head in a feeble attempt to refuse the small but generous offer. You don't have to do that, she trailed off, feeling awkward about a stranger being so hospitable within only minutes of meeting. Seriously, the bouncer looks like he might decapitate me on the way out if I don't pay up. She gestured over her shoulder to the shiny, full suit of knight's armor on display near the front door, complete with 7 feet of a deadly steel greatsword glinting in his cold grasp. Or maybe that's what'll happen if you do. Her dark eyes narrowed as she made her faux threat. Cadence gulped audibly. Good luck arguing with her. The barista's face relaxed as she continued. I insist. Welcome to St. Augustine. Hopefully you're one of the new regulars, she added with a warm smile, gesturing to the few guests still left in the seating area. I'm tired of seeing all the same faces in here. Cadence smiled back at her, filled with a feeling of peace she couldn't place. Why is it so hard to walk away? She could tell Melissa was waiting to see her reaction to the caffeinated concoction, so Cadence steeled herself and bravely took a swig of the potentially lethal fart-inducing beverage. Just what I need on my first day of class. Explosive diarrhea. A subtly sweet, warm and creamy wave washed across her palate, with just a hint of saltiness to keep the balance. Melissa must have seen the look on her face. The barista's smile grew as Cadence finished a large gulp, smacking her lips in approval. She glanced behind her quickly and was relieved to see there was no one else in line behind her before giving her feedback. Wow, that tastes incredible. What do you put in it? The concentrated caffeine lit up her body and made her blood surge with warmth inside her veins. Or was it her smiling at me that did that? Oh, some trusty Valenciano espresso blend, homemade salted caramel syrup, oat milk, a dash of sea salt, and a bit of magia. She winked mischievously when she said the last word. Magic? You wouldn't happen to be a witch, would you? Cadence asked, feigning evasiveness. Like Sabrina? 'Cause this tastes way better than what I special order at Starbucks. How am I supposed to drink that hot cat piss-flavored corporate latte now? She laughed once more, tickling her ears with the pleasant pitch. If you think that's good, wait until you try the pastry. I baked it myself. She seemed to glow even brighter after receiving the praise. Plus, we are much more affordable than them. Can't beat free. I'm a sucker for a bargain. For some stupid reason, she attempted to return the wink the barista had sent her way earlier and regretted it instantly, trying to play it off by pretending something got in her eye. She rubbed it gingerly as she stuffed her unused wallet back in her bag and grabbed her breakfast. What the actual fuck did you do that for? Shit, I gotta run to class. Thanks for the welcome basket. See you around, coffee queen. She flipped her wavy hair that was tickling her skin over her shoulder as she turned around, and a small amount of brown liquid dripped out of the sipping hole onto the front of her brand new light green hemp tank top. Smooth move. She noticed the barista had her hand over her mouth, attempting to stifle a laugh at what she could only assume was her slip. Of course she had to see that. No rest for the socially awkward. It's Melissa, but you can call me Mal, she called out across the shop as Cadence retreated towards the smudged glass door. Do I have to guess yours? She put her hand on the glossy portal she had entered only minutes earlier, briefly turning back towards the counter to meet the beautiful barista's eyes once more. Even at this distance, she could feel the intensity of her gaze. Cadence, she called back, feeling a bit silly that everyone in the coffee shop now knew her name, too. En esta vida o en la próxima, Cadence. Melissa gave a small wave as the door chimed and closed softly behind Cadence's back. Whatever that means. As she stepped out into the sunlight, she felt her heart thumping in her chest wildly, as if she had just run around the block. What the hell was that? Why are you so weird? She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she peered into the brown bag to see what lay within. She pulled out the sugary hand pie and took a tentative bite, feeling the layers of pastry dough flake and crack onto her lips as the creamy, sweet pink center oozed pleasantly into her mouth. Guava cheese! My fave. Lucky guess. Or maybe she is a witch. She pondered the way hearing her laugh had made her feel so warm and simply light. It clashed horribly with her own crushing doubts regarding how she had handled herself, though. Despite her fumbling behavior, it seemed to have ended on a high note. If you want to make some friends here and keep them, you better work on your conversational skills. She sighed. She thought briefly of one of her favorite fantasy role-playing games, imagining her own personal skill tree, with the speech branch hanging pathetically bare at level 1. Guess I'll be learning more than history here. Despite her awkward encounter, Cadence smiled and hummed a familiar tune as she began the short walk towards campus, ready to begin this long-awaited chapter of her life. She sipped her heavenly latte in between bites of her pastry as she trekked along, noticing how the vibrant green of the trees and blue of the sky seemed brighter than before she had entered the bakery. Maybe Dad wanted to make sure I had a good first day of class. If he was a ghost, surely his spirit would hang out here. Thanks for the free coffee, Pops. She felt oddly comforted by the thought of him still looking out for her in the city he'd adored so much in life, somewhere across the Vale. The sun had never felt so warm before.
The sun had never felt so warm before, is what it was supposed to say. It cut off at the end. This was my first attempt at even reading it aloud, and I think I did pretty good. I did this a while ago, but I just wanted to share my journey, my progress, and my imperfections as I do this, so not only can I document my own growth as a writer and narrator, but so that other people can see it too and know that when you start, you're not going to be a pro, you're not going to be perfect. You just have to be and allow it and have fun with it. And I thought some of my slip-ups were even kind of funny. I enjoyed it. So I hope that you did too. Thank you so much for listening, and I will have the upcoming chapters as soon as I can. Peace.